Hey, Rutgers, you can beat good or elite programs. Really, you can. Okay, so it is Washington season, and Rutgers heads out to Washington as a 10.5 point underdog. I think the over is 58.5, and Rutgers has hit the over every game this year. Nonetheless, this game can be one that accelerates our annual middle third spiral this coming Saturday. This past weekend, we all saw how Maryland gave Washington everything they can handle. Maryland was up 20-3 going into the fourth quarter. Washington came storming back. And Washington, I've talked about this before, they're not a consistently productive offense that's going to run the ball up and down the field like they did against us at SHI last year. But they are explosive. They can get some big plays, and they stormed back in the fourth quarter to defeat Maryland. And this kind of highlights what I've been talking about since the beginning of the year, and that Maryland is going to be a problem for us. We have 4 or 5-star Malik Washington, whose ever rating service you listen to, is helping to carry Maryland's offense. He's the kind of quarterback that gives us a problem. He's big and he's athletic. He can throw it. He can run it. Nonetheless, Washington was able to put up 21 points in the fourth quarter and defeat Maryland, who I've said several times has issues running the ball. But they're good on defense, defending against the run. And with Washington, as long as you have Damon Williams and Jonah Coleman and Denzel Boston, they're always going to stand a chance, and they're going to have the ability to put up points against you, regardless if it's a consistent process or they just break out and able to get yards and scoring in bunches. Damon Williams against Maryland, 28 of 41, 275 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. He did have rushed the ball for 14 times. So something we're going to have to keep an eye on and be able to manage. Jonah Coleman had a quiet day against Minnesota, and I don't know how this bears out for Antoine, but he had 18 rushes for 57 yards and a touchdown. And Denzel Boston had kind of a decent average day. He had 6 catches, 71 yards and a touchdown. Kind of held in check, but when it mattered, Washington was able to do what they needed to do to put out the win. So if we go by this past weekend's performance, Maryland is a game that many had penciled in as a win at the start of the season, while everybody was distracted by having to play Oregon and Ohio State and Penn State and Iowa and the big boys that always give us a problem. Our peers are the teams that are going to be problematic for us. And oh yeah, by the way, don't sleep on Purdue. Yeah, they lost to Illinois 43-27, but they're putting up just under 30 points a game. They led after one quarter against Illinois, and they had like 450 some odd yards of offense against Illinois. So you know what that kind of means for us. Ryan Brown, the quarterback, was 30 of 50 for 302 yards and a touchdown. They ran the ball for 150 yards, 151 yards actually. Get ready for a shootout against against Purdue. I mean, it's can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth, but this could be an Iowa, Minnesota, Ohio kind of game, where this game is going to be, I don't want to call Minnesota or Iowa a shootout. We only scored 28 points. Once we get into the Big Ten, those 30 and 40 and 50 point games aren't a thing any longer. But nonetheless, I have no hopes that because Maryland hung with Washington, that it's necessarily going to translate for us. I feel, as I did with Minnesota and Iowa, that their offensives would get better against us, and it kind of bared out that way. With our defense, our inability to get to the quarterback, prevent the big play, and just allow open receivers all over the field, and Washington playing at home, and Washington last year being able to run up and down the field against us on our home field, have a really good opportunity to get better against us. It'd be different if you kind of felt the defense was rounding into form and yada, yada, yada. But what Maryland showed, look, this Maryland game is going to be a dogfight. This is not one you can just pencil in and say, yeah, okay, we'll get a 6th win and go to a bowl game again. But that belies the fact that other teams fight the good fight, get big wins. I've been through this a million times, and we saw that this past Saturday. And the big shock, the big upset was, or happened in the Rose Bowl. And that's perhaps the worst Power 4 program in the country. Essentially runs Penn State off the field. And yes, UCLA, Rutgers, Penn State. UCLA came into SHI last year as one of the worst offenses in the country, one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, and they ran us off the field. Nico Lamalieva, who has all sorts of issues, threw 2 touchdowns, ran for 3 touchdowns. Does anybody think Ethan is going to have 5 touchdowns against Penn State? That kind of thing never happens at Rutgers. Yeah, okay, so, Penn State kind of climbed back in the game late, and they were kind of driving towards the end of the game, but UCLA was leading this whole game, and this is the kind of win that we never get. And watching Coach's pre-game press conference today, talked about it again. Once again, we always talk about it, how he wants to make incremental progress. That's the kind of program that we are. And he said people don't like to hear it. But Coach, it's 6 years. 6 years? When are we going to start taking the next step instead of crawling like a turtle? Other teams do it. UCLA did it. When are you going to get that ranked top 10 win? Short of the defense finally getting it and rounding into form, the only thing we can really hope for right now at this point is winning shootouts. And hope that the other team late in the game has the turnover, makes the mistake, that we've kind of been doing and how we've lost 2 Big Ten games in a row. You know, and we are who we are. You know, moving an inch at a time, kind of crawling along, spinning our wheels, not taking the next step. We're not Illinois. We're not Indiana. We're probably not going to be Maryland this year. We're not Minnesota. Minnesota has passed us by. You know, if only we can play Ohio, Miami of Ohio, Norfolk every game, we'd have something. Minnesota, okay, it's Ohio State. They lose 42-3, but they had 150 total yards a week after their quarterback, their Drake, looking like Drake May against us. Ohio loses to Ball State, so we're not going to be able to say with, in all likelihood, hey, they're the MAC champion. They gave us a good game. Norfolk, they lose to Hampton. So we have to have the least impressive wins year in and year out of any team in the country. And I'm not going to beat that to death. We talk about this all the time. We beat the teams that we were supposed to beat. We never beat the elite teams, and we struggle with our peers. We need 3 wins in our last 7 games to get to a bowl game again. 3rd consecutive bowl game. And barring a stunner of us doing something like UCLA did, which will not happen, you heard it here first, we're not beating Ohio State, we're not beating Penn State, and we're not beating Oregon. It's not in our DNA. Washington, the likely suspects are Washington, Maryland, Purdue, and Illinois. Talked a little bit about Purdue. They're not the patsy they were last year. They're running up some offense. They're going to be a problem for us. Don't be shocked if they put up 30 points on us. But I feel we have, surprisingly, a better chance against Illinois than we do against Washington, and here's why. Illinois tends to give up some points. They do. I think if we get into a 37-34, 40-37, 41-38 kind of game with them, we can avoid the mistake and they make the mistake late. That's our only opportunity. I think Washington's defense is much better than Illinois. So winning a 41-38 game against Washington is very slim. Maryland struggles to run the ball, but we all know what happens with big athletic quarterbacks that can run it and throw it. They give us a problem. That's the kind of game where Antoine might have to control the ball because Maryland can't run the ball. And they still manage to win. So we're going to have a strength of our offense against their defense, which is pretty good. And they're pretty good against the run. So the way I see it, Maryland, Purdue, and Illinois are kind of must-wins for us to get to a bowl. Could you imagine if we went to 5-7 again, 5-7 this year? Now, a lot of people are like, getting to a bowl this year is going to be tough because, it's a tougher schedule. It's not like last year when we were supposed to be 10-2 or 9-3. We have Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State, but those aren't the problem teams. We know we're going to lose to them. And I'm okay with it. As long as once in a while we can be competitive in a game against the elite teams. Maybe put a little bit of a scare in through them. But if we lose soundly to Maryland, Washington, or even Illinois, who I always feel is kind of overrated, but they just managed to win despite getting blown out by Indiana. We should be able to compete with our peers. Just beat your peers. Forget about incrementalism. Beat somebody. If we were to beat Washington, Illinois, Purdue, and Maryland, it's not, strength of schedule isn't going to be that impressive. And if no one's going to begrudge you for losing to Oregon, they just won't. Or Ohio State, they won't. Penn State now, people are down on Penn State and calling for James Franklin's job. But Penn State is Penn State, and we never beat them. But if you can't beat your peers and you get run off the field by the elite teams, you have no business, coach, you have no business talking about people not wanting to hear about incrementalism. You need to win. You need wins against our peers, and you need to knock off a good team every once in a while, or an elite team every once in a while. I'm tired of watching teams like Utah and BYU or SMU, who have no recruiting advantages and don't have the recruiting classes that we do, and they're ranked teams. It's allowed to beat good teams, above average teams, elite teams. Going to Washington, you want to quell the criticism. Go into Washington and show that you belong. I don't feel, 10.5 points underdog, quite frankly, is probably about right. They have the edge at quarterback. They have the edge at running back. Wide receiver, kind of close. Defensively, I should say wide receiver 1. Denzel Boston's probably going to be a second-round pick. Ian remains to be seen. Needs to improve the route tree a little bit. But if it comes down to a contested catch, we know what the deal is there. Washington's defense, not even close. So you want to show that you belong and that we belong in the Big Ten. It's not against the rules to go out and beat Washington and their home field. We know what's going to happen with Oregon. We know what's going to happen with Ohio State and probably Penn State. You need to show up against the Washingtons, Illinois, and Marylands of the world. And yes, you better go out and beat Purdue. If you give up 27 points and you win 44-27, not going to hate that. But this is kind of an important year. Conventional wisdom is that Coach Schiano is never on the hot seat. And the chances for him being fired are slim to none. And look, we all love Coach, what he's done for us. He's the right coach for Rutgers because we've talked about this a lot. New Jersey is a unique place. And other major universities, people stay home. They support their local universities. But in New Jersey, people look to get away and they go other places, and we lose our best students, best athletes, and best student athletes. So there's not, you can't just, you could be a good coach and you could come here and fail. What was it? Terry Shea went 5-6, got coach of the year, and then he was gone not long after that. So at Rutgers, we're up against it like no other programs. So coach being from Wyckoff. Is it Wyckoff or Waldwick? I think it's Wyckoff. You know, kind of, he understands that, understands the culture of New Jersey and the academic, social, and athletic implications of playing in this marketplace. And so he fits that way. But if we're ever going to take the next step, it can't be incremental. We have to take that leap. Talked about it forever. Boise does it. Utah does it. BYU does it. SMU, who got the death penalty, they're in the college football championship last year. And their recruiting classes are no better than ours. So what is it? It's time to scheme it up. Let's go into Washington. Let's get a solid win on the road. Get to 4-2 because we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen when it comes to Oregon. And on that note, everybody enjoy the rest of your week. Let's hope that Washington's season doesn't turn out to be a 10.5-point loss as set by Vegas, who's not really having a good... the Jets, 1.5-point favorites over the Cowboys. Man. You know, there's a lot of correlations between Rutgers and the Jets. But we've been down that road before. Won't go through it again. Everybody enjoy your week, and we'll see you the next time.